I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. This is the 11th meeting of the Board of Directors in 2022. We'll start the meeting with an invocation by Pastor Rob Young, and I'll lead the pledge. All rise.
Father, we want to thank you so much for the privilege of being able to gather tonight. And Father, for these directors, and I just thank you for their willingness to lead our city, to provide sound leadership and direction. Father, I pray that you would just bless them, their extended families. I pray, Father, that you would give them wisdom. Father, your word says if we seek you first in your kingdom, Lord, all these things will be added unto us. And Father, you've also asked and told us in your word, rather, that if we ask for wisdom, you'll give it to us. And so, Father, I just pray that we would seek your counsel, your wisdom. Father, decisions at times are very difficult to make. With people from different backgrounds and different belief systems. But we pray that you would simply give the directors your peace and your comfort, and just have them make decisions that would be best for the city. And Father, we thank you. We thank you for all of the city leaders and servants, all our first responders, all those who are employees of this wonderful city. We just thank you for them and just pray that your hand would be upon them as well. So God, we know that there'll be much discussed tonight, much that has to be addressed. And again, we ask for your direction. We ask for your wisdom. And Father, that we would seek you in all things. And we pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we'll call the meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Director Aaron Holliday.
Here.
Director Elaine Jones.
Here.
Director Marcia Dobbs-Smith.
Here.
Director Carol Weatherford.
Here.
Director Karen Garcia.
Here.
Director Steve Trusty.
Here.
Mayor Pat McCabe.
Here. At this time, we'll consider approval of the agenda. Are there any additions, deletions to the agenda, or items to be moved from the consent agenda to new business?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we move item number 4, the authorized personnel in the engineering department, resolution R2298, to new business, please.
Okay, we move that to the first action item under new business. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Director Holliday. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. We need a motion to approve.
As amended.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Director Trustee,
Second.
Director Garcia. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. This time we'll consider the minutes of the regularly scheduled meeting on May 17, 2022. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes as presented? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mayor.
Director Jones, seconded by
Second.
Director Dobbs-Smith. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Minutes are approved. Recognition of guests. We have Mr. Gary Troutman, President and CEO of Hot Springs Chamber of Commerce and Metro Partnership, to address the board. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Appreciate, as always, the time tonight. Since last reported to you, just like to tell you specifically tonight a lot about workforce education. We've been meeting with Lake Hambleton Schools, Superintendent Higginbotham, Principal Westerman, Amanda Porter, CTE, we're looking at incorporating our 11th grade career fair along with what we saw in Jonesboro and what Lake Hamilton did last month, bringing all the schools from not only Hot Springs and Garland County, but regional all the way to the state of Oklahoma, basically the same market area that our two hospitals would tell you. The thought behind that not only is helping employers find jobs, helping young people with opportunities, but also trying to get folks that live in a driving area of Hot Springs to actually move to Hot Springs instead of just come here occasionally. So I think this will be a major pull. We've got Lake Hamilton behind us. We've already identified dates in late April of 2023, and we'll start working on that here very shortly. Speaking of staying with Lake Hamilton theme, I got to speak at their career training banquet, and proud to tell you that they had 135 of their 280 seniors complete some sort of career training. So that's something I wouldn't have been able to tell you a year or two ago. Things are changing, certainly with our schools with respect to workforce and workforce ed. If you haven't met him yet, Brendan Spalding is the new field representative for Congressman Westman's office. He's new on the job. Had our monthly lunch with City Manager Burrow, County Judge Mahoney, visit Hot Springs CEO Steve Harrison. Let me get back to workforce. Cutter Morning Star had a similar event the following week. Now, Cutter only has 53 seniors, but 38 of those seniors completed career ed. That's a whopping 72%. So really kudos to Dr. Nancy Anderson at Cutter and to Sean Higginbotham at Lake Hamilton. Attended the Village POA meeting. Steve's sitting behind me. He gave a very inspirational talk to Rotary about tourism numbers and the forecast for this summer we can look forward to. As you probably know, we continue to meet National Park College. I'm not going to let that BSN degree issue just fall by the wayside. Dr. Huggins has been very proactive on that. I believe there's other meetings this Friday transpiring. We had our quarterly meeting with the mayor, City Manager Burrow, and our other larger investors, them obviously representing the city in that meeting. I'm proud to announce we've hired Cheryl Staggs, the former executive director at Ouachita Children's Center, as our new CFO and operations manager. She just started 2 weeks ago. We've had meetings with Brian Gerke on possible commercial deals we could be working on. We've met with Katie Wilson, the new general manager at Triumph. We've got 2 projects that we're all but ready to announce. We're just waiting on AEDC to cross the T's and dot the I's on those. Those should happen in the next 30 to 45 days. We've nominated 4 folks for 20 in their 20s consideration. They are Noelle Stevens, Richard she's State Farm agent, Richard Burke, local attorney, Dr. Ryan Montgomery, James Montgomery's son, if you know him, Cassidy Kendall, the young lady that wrote the 100 Things to Do in Hot Springs Before You Die. Want to congratulate you all, and specifically Director Weatherford, on the Bombers and Barbecue. Great event. Specifically the Molly Ringwalds, if we're playing favorites. That was a particularly fun time. We've had another meeting with a company from Florida that approached us, interested in doing business in Hot Springs. We had our Education Council meeting that Representative Les Warren and Dr. Hogan lead. We had that at Hot Springs Junior Academy last week as part of the Arkansas Association of Education Administrators Conference. We met just yesterday. Cheryl, Lisa, and I went out to the Passport Center, took a tour of the facility, and I don't think I'm divulging anything secret. They produce 8 million pieces every year. Not all passports, some border crossing documents, but 8 million each year on 2 shifts. Thought that was quite impressive. We had our monthly call with Mike Preston, our Secretary of Commerce. Tomorrow we go to Little Rock for the Arkansas Business 40 Under 40 luncheon, and Harmony's brother Quincy and Scott Dews from First Security will be honored. And if I can close, Mayor, you set the bar pretty high last Thursday evening, and I'm going to see if Mike can raise it just a little bit. So be guest DJ on Thursday night.
Just come out and support Gary as he's the DJ for Bridge Street Live. Your session begins around 6 p.m.
I didn't know we could do costume changes, so thank you for letting us know that. So that added a whole new dynamic to
go.
everything.
He sets the bar.
He did.
That was a good
But happy to answer any questions you all may have. Yes,
Director
ma'am.
Garcia?
Thank you, Mayor. I noticed another business moving out of the old mall or uptown or whatever the current name is. Is there anything new or on
know-
the horizon?
Well, they've had a contract to do business with a major retailer for some time. Hasn't moved forward. We've been to Benton to tour the adventure park they had over there when things didn't progress as we'd hoped with the one in Meridian, Mississippi. But we have been in contact. We actually met with the owner in Dallas not too long ago. But Director Garcia, I mean, everything's on the table, but it's kind of the nature of malls in America. But we're hoping that the deal with the retailer comes through, or they decide to go another path. So
Thank you.
I wish I had better news.
Yeah, I do too. I was there to vote, and while waiting in line, I was a lot of people having conversation about it, and one of the stores just moved out. That was the reason a lot of those people were going out there, and I'm just concerned that it's going to get even less lucrative currently for the current owners.
I haven't been there in some times. Of course, I've been back home 15 years, but I hear Park Plaza is not in great shape. I do hear that the one thing that with the mall phenomenon, there's not many folks looking to go in, but there are restaurants that like to be on the out parcels. Obviously, there's plenty of parking and room for traffic. That's something we're trying to pursue. But I don't have to tell you all. Most people want to be closer to the bypass and either on Central or Higdon. It's malls sometimes just a little too far out for some folks' liking.
Right, but I've read in some of our periodicals of out-of-the-box activities for new office spaces, even apartments, and just a whole different direction to use that space for.
Well, and I can tell you in meeting with the owners, everything is on the table, and you're absolutely right. You're not going to get a better commercial rate if you're willing to go there, and they're willing to go non-traditional, not necessarily retail.
Thank
So,
you.
thank you.
That's good. That part's good to know.
Any additional questions for Mr. Troutman? Thank you and good luck.
Thank you. All right, we'll see you Thursday.
At this time, we'll hear the city manager's report. Mr. Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We've really had a lot of great events happening in Hot Springs recently. The 75th anniversary of the airport, the running of the tubs, and of course Bridge Street Live. And we had a special DJ there. We just talked about it, but our Mayor McCabe was our favorite DJ of the night.
There it is.
I don't know if you recognize this guy.
Did that MC
I think he did have a costume change that was an MC Hammer costume.
Yeah, that's what he
Yeah.
But I can tell you that it was really refreshing to see life in Hot Springs making a return to what it was like pre-pandemic. And I don't know, somebody posted some of that on Facebook, I think. I saw a lot of comments that best mayor in the world and what a great mayor. I don't know. Hey, has it been sinking in?
Well, you just take one day at a time.
That said, I do want to remind everyone that COVID's still with us and that active cases, even though they're low, they are still slowly on the rise in Garland County. So our Garland County Health Officer, Dr. Gene Shelby, is encouraging everyone who is eligible for a booster shot to please get the shot. But again, the numbers are extremely low in comparison to what we've seen, but we do want to continue to encourage people to get the booster. I want to commend our Hot Springs Police Department for maintaining the highest standard of active shooter training, which is provided by ALERT, Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training. The department also provides free civilian response to attack shooter events training, which help educate the public, private businesses, churches, educational facilities on how to address an active attack and what to do until the police arrive to resolve the situation. Chief Chapman has scheduled 8 classes in the past 2 weeks that will touch close to 2,000 additional citizens in our community. I know he was here today on 2 different sessions of training for city staff. I think we've got those planned again next week and the following week. But for more information, for those that are interested in training or a threat assessment, they also come in and do threat assessments for your businesses. This is all free of charge as a service. Contact Chief Chapman or Public Information Officers Omar Cervantes or Jesus Anaya at 321-6789. Chief Chapman has also been asked to serve on the State School Safety Committee, being overseen by Dr. Cheryl May of the Criminal Justice Institute through the Governor's Office. We're proud of the work that our men in blue are doing here in Hot Springs.
Great.
The city received the second and final tranche of American Rescue Plan Act funds in the amount of $5.7 million just on Monday. That brings us to right at 11.4 million. I think we've earmarked about $1 million of that, or spent about $1 million of that on police items, but there's still about $10 million in that fund. As we continue to work on our unfunded major projects, we'll be bringing that to the board soon. These funds have to be earmarked, kind of a bad term, but they have to be identified on where you're going to use them by 2024, and they have to be spent by 2026. So we'll be bringing you an updated project list. As you know, one of the board's priorities was to develop that list and then have an ad hoc committee come in and kind of prioritize those. So we're working on that. We've had several departments that have submitted items. We'll continue to get that in a list form. I have not developed an ad hoc committee, but I plan to do that very soon. As that list gets completed, we'll get it prioritized, and then we'll present that to the board at a work session, and then identify if any of the additional ARPA funds that we have can be allocated to any of those projects. So I want to let you know where we're at on that. Hope Works continues to be a great success. In April, they collected 1.85 tons of trash, and in May, they collected 152 bags of litter weighing 1.5 tons. So it's really been a great program. It's hard to believe that we still have that much litter on our roads and highways. This particular group primarily focuses on our state highways that are within the city, like Central, Albert Pike, Airport Road, and so forth. The fire department recently completed its annual hydrant flow testing, which ran from March 8th through May the 24th. A total of 2,226 hydrants were flow tested. We had 51 work orders as a result of that was moved over to our water division, and those repairs have already taken place. Flow testing helps us locate any faulty hydrants, but primarily also helps us maintain our ISO rating for lower insurance ratings. The Garland County Master Gardeners recently earned the Master Gardener Project of the Year for the Pollinator Farm near the Farmers Market. This beautification project attracts needed pollinators, providing educational opportunities for our youth. Parks and Trails Department, of course, are very involved in that, assisting in labor, ornamental trees. And you may have also noticed the colorful flower baskets are back up downtown. They'll really be growing out over the next couple of weeks. And that's another great collaborative project that we have with our Master Gardeners and our Parks Department, so we really appreciate them. And then finally, the city is registered to be a participating vendor in the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program. That is a program that will help city water customers who can apply for up to $2,000 in payment assistance. This is free, federally funded program, will help low-income households pay their residential water or wastewater past due amounts. We're still waiting. We haven't been notified that we were accepted as a vendor. We anticipate that we will. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll get that notification, and we'll get some more information out through press releases for our citizens that may have past due water and wastewater bills that can take advantage of this program. Mayor, that completes my report.
Very good. Thank you. At this time, we'll hear from directors on upcoming events. Any upcoming? Director Holliday.
Thanks. One, I want to say happy Pride Month to everybody. And there's lots of activities going on this month, but the one thing I want to mention is on Saturday, June 18th, there will be a Pride Walk. We'll be congregating at 2 o'clock on Exchange Street in between Grateful Head and the parking garage. The walk will start at 3 and conclude at the Central Theater at about 4 o'clock. The Central Theater will have essentially after March entertainment. It will be family friendly, all ages, until 8 o'clock. And then after hours entertainment after 8 o'clock. Tickets are $10 for that, but the parade is free and open to anyone in the community, anyone who's part of the LGBTQ+ community, as well as allies. Also, a save the date for the 26th. There will be a picnic in celebration of Pride Month at Arc Isle, and information is on hotspringspride.org. So, thanks.
Good. Thank you.
Ma'am,
Director Jones.
since she mentioned the 18th, on the 18th at Farmers Market, we will have our, when I say we, you know, I'm a part of everything that goes on in District 2. We will have our Juneteenth celebration all afternoon. It'll start about 3 o'clock after the farmers leave until I guess about 7, before it does dark. Thank you, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you. Any, Director Weatherford?
It's not an upcoming event, but it's, I just wanted to thank everyone that was involved at the Bombers and Barbecue. Oaklawn, Walmart, Mike Sisk with OT, Bank OZK, George O'Connor and Jake Duplantis, Resort Cable, my daughter Kim, who this wouldn't have taken place without her because she did most of the work. And she worked the whole month of March, April, and May on this thing. We'd worked on it a long time, but it was 90 days solid that she worked on it. Steve Harrison for an unbelievable fireworks show that we got many compliments on, especially Glenn Barrington and the airport staff. Wasn't much sleep Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'll tell you. Sanitation Department, Police Department, Stormwater, Chris Austin, who ran the KCBS barbecue cook-off, where we got many compliments on the trophies that we had done for there. And we had 7 of the top 20 teams in the United States cooking there. We gave away over $15,000 in prize money to these guys. And got a lot of compliments and from KCBS itself that well-run barbecue cook-off, and they are looking forward to being able to come back someday. And we are already working on next year. So that's it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very nice. Congratulations. Look forward to next year.
Yes.
Any other items, upcoming events? Just as Director Weatherford, this doesn't necessarily come under upcoming events, but as upcoming activity, you know, we'll be starting our street paving program. And we're going to be doing a lot of additional streets with some of the additional monies that we had. And just a reminder to the public that, you know, I received a call the other day from a citizen who was not very pleased with the condition of our streets. And every street he mentioned was a state highway. And people get really confused that just because a street is inside the city limits doesn't mean it's the city's responsibility. In fact, we're prohibited from addressing any of those matters on state highways other than making a phone call and making the state highway aware of where the biggest pothole is or where some deep crevice is. So, you know, the caller became quite disturbed with my response and, you know, hung up quite abruptly after a final comment from him. But, you know, I understand that because it's inside the city limits, you think it's the city's responsibility. We're not allowed to touch it. Most of the roads I drive each day is on a state highway, even though I'm in the city limits. I'm not on many roads that are not a state highway in town. If you look at Albert Pike, Airport Road, Higdon Ferry, Central Avenue, Grand Avenue, Malvern Avenue, I mean, those are major arterials, streets, and they get you where you got to go, and then you go off into your neighborhood. So, so please bear that in mind. So, any other comments? We'll go ahead with the consent agenda. These are items of a routine nature that do not merit individual discussion. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Mayor.
Director Garcia,
Second.
Seconded by?
Second.
Pardon? Director Weatherford. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is adopted. We had a couple items under old business, and so at this time we'll consider Resolution R-22-75 and ask City Attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-75, resolution declaring a certain structure located at 445 Silver Street in Hot Springs a public nuisance, and declaring such pursuant to Hot Springs Code, Section 17-1-1 at seek. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Weatherford.
Second.
Seconded by Director Garcia. And providing a staff report is Director of Planning and Development, Ms. Kathy Selman.
Thank you. This is 445 Silver Street, single-family vacant structure. This has been before you at the last couple of meetings. I'm happy to say that we have received an acknowledgement from the mortgage company of receiving the notice that you would be considering condemnation this evening, and so we are ready to proceed.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you. Do we have any, anybody from the audience that speak on this? No?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of a resolution condemning certain structure located at 445 Silver Street? 445 Silver Street. There is none, Mayor.
Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we'll consider another item under old business, Resolution R-22-79, and ask City Attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-79, a resolution declaring a certain structure located at 718 Ward Street in Hot Springs a public nuisance, and condemning such pursuant to Hot Springs Code, Section 17-1-1 at seek. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
So moved.
Trustee, Director Weatherford, and again, Kathy Selman, Director of Planning Development. for
Thank
the
you.
Staff report.
Again, a vacant single-family structure. This is at 718 Ward. There are two structures on this lot. We are only seeking condemnation on one, and that is 718. This also has been before you earlier this year. And again, I'm happy to say that we have received notice that the notice we sent reached its intended destination. So we are ready to proceed and request that you approve condemnation of 718 Ward.
Very good. Any questions of Ms. Selman? Anyone from the audience that signed up? No?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of a resolution condemning a certain structure located at 718 Ward Street? 718 Ward Street. There is none, Mayor.
Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now, the item that we pulled from the consent agenda will be heard at this time. It's considered Resolution R-22-98. Now entertain a motion to read by title.
I'll just read it for you, Mayor. It's just a resolution. A resolution amending the table of authorized personnel within the engineering department, amending the 2022 budget and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. Now, if you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Director Weatherford, Director Garcia, and Mr. Gary Carnahan will provide the staff report. Welcome.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Welcome. Thank you for all that you guys are doing tonight, and big agenda. On this particular item, a lot of positive things happening, as we know, in Garland County and the city of Hot Springs, including infrastructure improvements by the city, by our franchise utility providers, and also by private sector developers. And that's all very positive. There's kind of an unintended consequence that's happened, though, is that the city engineering department is responsible for making sure that all those projects follow codes and are built properly. And we have not added any additional inspection staff or management staff to the engineering department to match that. Consequently, some of you have been getting phone calls from our citizens who are upset, and rightfully so, that things are not being managed and watched properly. So we feel like we are not doing our job properly and need additional help to meet your expectations and to meet the expectations of our citizens in the area. Specifically, I'd like to point out that Summit Utilities, who was CenterPoint Energy, our gas company, was in previous years employing one subcontractor to do the gas main replacements in the city. Now they have 3 contractors. They have sold to Summit Utilities. Summit Utilities is accelerating their program to replace all of the old steel and iron gas mains in the city. So now they have 3 construction companies working in the city. AT&T is aggressively installing high fiber optic cable, high capacity fiber optic cable in the city. 2 years ago, they were not doing this at all. Now they have 5 construction companies working in the city, installing, boring and installing fiber optic cables. The city and the county passed the Our Roads Now program to increase our paving. We normally do about $1 million a year. When we have a full year of funding, we'll be able to spend over $4 million a year paving our streets. And that is a responsibility. To make sure that gets done is a responsibility of our Public Works Department and the Engineering Department is to help select those streets, rate and rank those streets, manage the contractors, and do the inspections. Related to that, when we improve our streets, we like to also improve the sidewalks and ADA ramps in the sidewalk system adjacent to those streets. So we also expect that we're going to increase the amount of sidewalk construction by a factor of 4, just like we're doing the paving, proposing to do the paving. We have over $2.5 million of grants that we expect to be awarded and under construction in the next 12 months. And the private sector continues to add to their development. And the engineering department is one of the departments that's responsible for reviewing those plans to make sure they meet code, but then also to follow up during the construction phase to make sure that they're built properly. So I'll also mention that a couple of years ago, we upgraded our street repair ordinance, which required bonding, a new permitting program, bonds, and more inspection of and more stringent requirements for street repairs. All of these things that I mentioned are all wonderful and good, but sadly, people don't do what you expect, but what you inspect. And we don't have enough feet on the ground and eyes on the projects to make sure they're done properly. So we've been in meetings where we have subcontractors in the meetings with papers listing, here's all the things you must do, and we've even had them sign the paper and say, we will do that. But, 2 days later, they're not. So we have to follow up on that. So in order to help resolve that issue, we're proposing to add 1 position to the engineering department, a right-of-way manager. We call it the reason we selected that term is because all the work that this particular person is watching over happens in the city right-of-way. Sidewalks, paving program, street cuts, utilities, in people's yards and in the right-of-way. So it's kind of a catch-all term to say, if it's happening in the right-of-way, we need someone who's in charge of that, who's dedicated to make sure that that's done properly. So it's a grade 18 position. In this first year, it would be an additional cost to our budget of $45,000, and then in the subsequent years, it would be an additional cost of $80,000 for a full year. This is a half year. So that's our request tonight, and I'll stop and see if you have any questions.
Director Garcia?
Just clarification, even though the title is right-of-way manager, and that's their primary, but as an engineer, if needed, they can, this position can perform other duties, that they're not limited to right-of-way duties. It's my understanding that everything going through the planning department that needs to go to the planning commission has to go routing, and often engineering is the last department it's routed to, and you don't have enough time to commit if it's a short window to the next planning commission meeting. So if needed, can this position help in any area of engineering for the city?
Yes, ma'am. We wrote the job description so that the primary focus are those right-of-way items, but certainly it's a pretty, I think it's like a 10-item long job description
Right.
to cover all those things you talked about.
Yes, well, thank you. I just wanted the
Right.
public to be
Good
aware of
point.
that it's covering a lot of areas other than the primary duties.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Gary? Thank you.
Mayor, I have,
Oh, Director Trustee.
Gary, I just want you to know, I asked to move this down to new business. I fully support this position. My thought is that I'd just like to ask our city manager, our HR department, I think, Bill, in your last city manager's report on May 17th, we had 15 full-time openings, including 2 department heads. I'd just like for us to evaluate whether this can be a net zero growth to the City of Hot Springs employees. Any of those 15 open positions or any other positions as they come open, and I know y'all are doing that and you're doing a good job at managing our workforce, but it's just, if it's possible, I'd just like for us to evaluate that.
Sure, I can appreciate that. I could tell you that we review every position. Each one of those is signed by a deputy city manager and myself. We talk to the department head. We make sure we justify each one of those positions as they come up. As you've seen over the past 2 years, we've had a phenomenal increase in the amount of people that are coming. You can see that in all of our tax returns. We not only need every position that is currently posted, we need more. There are a couple of departments that will probably be coming back to the board for additional resources. One of those, and that doesn't, we also have a district court that I spoke with on Friday. They're setting cases out till September. Those are city employees as well. They need additional help. We're seeing all of this growth, but it's also putting some pretty stringent burdens on most of the departments. We don't mind hard work, but we want to be able to get the work done, and we are really exceeding our resources in a lot of areas. So I do want the board to feel confident, though, that we look at each one of these positions. I'm probably the hardest person in the city to have an additional employee come through, especially during budget sessions. There's a few of my department heads out here now that could probably attest to that. But when we need it, then I'm going to support the request. But I appreciate what you're saying.
Certainly, and as I mentioned, I think y'all are doing a good job at managing the personnel.
sir.
So,
Thank you.
thank you,
Actually,
Gary.
this
Thank you.
workshop on this was for 2 positions, and y'all cut it back to 1, wasn't it? Or we talked about it in the work session.
Some time ago, we talked about, when we first made the right-of-way ordinance change, we, at that time, had talked about hiring a right-of-way manager, but we didn't. So we're kind of coming in late to the party on this, really.
Any further questions of Gary? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I know this was a consent agenda item. Anyone from the audience that wanted to speak on this? Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. Now we're on to the, well, we did move that from consent to new business, but those items that were previously listed under new business will be addressed at this time. We'll consider Resolution R-22-101 and ask City Attorney to read by title.
Mayor, this is Resolution R-22-101, a resolution declaring a certain structure located at 414 Henderson Street in City of Hot Springs a nuisance. And condemning same pursuant to Title 17 of the Hot Springs Code. That concludes your reading, Mayor, and the commentary. If you would entertain a motion, second to adopt.
Motion to
So
adopt.
moved.
Director Trustee, seconded by,
Second.
who was the second? Director Garcia. And Ms. Kathy Solomon will provide staff report. Welcome back.
Thank you. Excuse me.
We could do that.
I
for
always
each
say
one if
that.
you'd like. We could do that for each one if you'd like. You've got several.
That'd be great, yeah. Yeah, what am I doing here? I don't know. I do want to say what I always say when we request condemnation, which is to result in demolition and removal of a residential structure in Hot Springs, that this is the last resort. We have tried everything reasonably possible to attain compliance and get these dwellings back into a livable condition, and it's just not always possible. In these cases, the owner is either unwilling or does not have the resources to take the action that is required to bring the home back into a compliant state. So this is very sad to have to do this, but we do have three this evening. This first one is 414 Henderson, a vacant single-family residence. Neighborhood Services has been working with property owners since 2008. It became vacant in 2013. Not to say that there haven't been squatters intermittently living here, but it has officially been vacant since that time. At the time of the last interior inspection, inspectors observed damaged and missing flooring, non-working bathroom facilities, water heaters, electrical issues, damaged and missing siding, soffit and fascia missing in boarding windows. The property is so overgrown with bamboo at this time to the point of preventing access to the back of the property and the structure. So we can only speculate that the condition has continued to deteriorate. The owner is using the carport and the yard to store unsightly items such as inoperable vehicles and lawn equipment. The owner of the structure, Ms. Vivian Hutchinson, is deceased. Her son, Mr. Kenneth Hutchinson, has inherited the property. Following the city attorney's recommendation, both Ms. Vivian Hutchinson and Mr. Hutchinson were notified of these proceedings via certified mail at Mr. Hutchinson's address, and we do have proof of service on this, and request that you approve the request for condemnation at 414 Henderson, please.
Any questions of Ms. Selman on this?
I have it's a question, I guess, specific to this, but we usually don't see a property with big vehicles in the front yard. How do we handle that? Because you need access to the structure itself.
We do. The way that the contract is written with the person who is the low bidder on removing the structure is that personal items on the property are included in the removal request. Thorough notice has been provided to the owner, and no change to the condition has occurred. So
Okay.
that's what happens.
Any further questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you. Do we have anybody sign up?
No, sir.
Any discussion amongst directors?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of a resolution condemning certain structure located at 414 Henderson? 414 Henderson. There is none, Mayor.
Thank you. No discussion amongst directors. Please call the roll.
Director Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. The resolution's adopted. Now we'll consider Resolution R-22-102 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-102, a resolution declaring a certain structure located at 1010 Greenwood Avenue in the City of Hot Springs a nuisance and condemning same pursuant to Title 17 of the Hot Springs Code. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by?
Second.
How was that? Director Garcia. And again, Planning and Development Director, Ms. Kathy Selman, for the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a vacant, single-family residence. There are two structures on this property. The other is 101 Peculiar Alley. We are asking only that you condemn the structure at 1010 Greenwood. The structure was previously condemned by the board in 2010 following a fire that significantly damaged the structure. At that time, however, enough work was completed by the owners to justify not removing the structure. However, little if any work has been completed since that time, and the structures remain vacant and secured since then, despite notices requesting that work be resumed. The property has been owned by Mr. Jose Cano, Mario Cano, and Miss Joanna Iriqueta since 2004. Each of these were notified separately of tonight's proceeding, and we have received proof of service from all three. The interior of the structure is still unfinished, with open and unfinished walls, missing electrical and plumbing. The exterior of the structure is missing siding, soffit, and fascia. The crawl space is open. Metal roofing was installed over part of the roof, but the project was not completed, and therefore we are asking once again that you condemn the structure at 1010 Greenwood.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you. Anyone from the audience sign up?
No, sir.
Anyone here to speak in opposition of resolution condemning a certain structure at 1010 Greenwood Avenue? 1010 Greenwood Avenue. There's none, Mayor.
Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution's adopted. We'll consider Resolution R-22-103 and ask the city attorney to read by title.
Resolution R-22-103, a resolution declaring a certain structure located at 110 Boaz Street in the City of Hot Springs a nuisance and condemning same pursuant to Title 17 of the Hot Springs Code. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Jones, seconded by Director Dobbs Smith. And again, staff report by Ms. Selman.
Thank you. Excuse me. 110 Boaz is a vacant single-family residence, and Neighborhood Services has been working to attain compliance on this property since 2012. In 2020, following notices from Neighborhood Services, the owner, Mr. Willie Curtis, obtained a demolition permit to remove the structure. However, that permit expired in May of 2021, and the structure was not removed. We again sent notices requesting that the demolition be completed and debris removed from the property. This house is missing a portion of its back half, and the decking and rafters from the roof are missing, and we have again an open crawl space. At this time, Mr. Curtis is working without a permit and at a very slow pace, removing the structure. We are asking that the board condemn the property so that the city might assist Mr. Curtis with removal of the structure. During the limited title search, we also came across the name of a possible lender, H. Gerald Gibbs Trust. Consequently, we sent notifications to them. And Mr. Curtis, the trustee, H. Gerald Gibbs, and we have received proof of service from both of them, and we request that you approve condemnation of 110 Boaz.
Any questions of Ms. Selman? Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have two individuals that have signed up to speak on this matter. Mr. Willie Curtis. Mr. Curtis, please come forward and restate your name and address and district, please.
During this time, I developed a heart condition. I have documentation from my doctor to say so. I've been shut down. Last month, I got the A stent in my heart. I'm stable. I'm doing good now. I asked for 90 days to resolve this issue, and I'll have it took care of.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Curtis?
Mr. Curtis, you're aware that the board will not take any act, or if the board takes action tonight, no action regarding the removal of the structure will take place for 30 days.
Yes, sir.
Would you be able to get a valid permit within the next 30 days and begin the self-demolition?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then do you have any objection with the board going ahead with its decision to condemn the property tonight, understanding that you may get a permit to do it yourself?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Curtis.
Thank you.
Mr. Marvin Rodriguez. Mr. Rodriguez, please come forward and restate your name, address, and city district, please. Welcome.
Good evening, Marvin Rodriguez. Well, we're trying to get these, it's 1207 Other Pike. These, we're trying to get these land to try to make it all commercial, since it's a split zoning. And
Oh, I think you're on another subject, Mr. Rodriguez. You're later on. Just give us a moment or two, and we'll. That's in two more action items.
correct.
Okay, I'll call you back in a minute.
All right,
okay?
perfect.
Okay, so that'd be was there anybody else who wanted to speak on the issue of 110 Boaz?
Anyone here to speak in opposition of a resolution condemning a certain structure at 110 Boaz? 110 Boaz. No others.
Very good. Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Resolution is adopted. The last four action items are all ordinances, and the first ordinance is O-22-18. And I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only.
So moved.
Director Trustee.
Second.
Seconded by Director Garcia. We have a motion to motion and second to suspend the rules and read by title only. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Council, please read by title.
Ordinance O-22-18, an ordinance amending the zoning map from C2 to R4 for split-zoned property generally located at 500 Terry Street, amending the future land use plan map, and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Director Dobbs Smith, seconded by Director Trustee. This continues to be the Kathy Salmon show, so Director of Planning Development.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The applicant on this item is Mr. Rustin Duke, and he's requesting R4, medium-high-density residential zoning, on approximately 1.35 acres of land at 500 Terry Street. It's currently zoned R4, medium-high-density residential, and C2 general business district, so it's split zoned. has a future land use classification of linear commercial corridor and residential medium high. The application stated that the reason for this request is to build 8 luxury duplexes. Surrounding land uses in the area, to the north is single-family residential, to the east, Hot Springs apartments, to the south, single-family residential, and to the west, shopping center, the location of dirt cheap indoor flea market, and a variety of other units occupied and vacant. The applicant submitted a 2-page narrative in support of this zoning request, which contained 2 findings, responding to the mandatory findings as required by Hot Springs Code Section 16-11E1, noting that this is consistent with the land uses in the area and that it fulfills a public need for land so zoned. He would like to use this land, which is partly zoned the way he needs it, and he would like to take the part that is not and make it consistent with the rest of it so that he can complete this project and provide additional housing in Hot Springs. The Planning Commission advertised their agenda and called for testimony at their regularly scheduled May 12, 2022 meeting. By their 8-0 vote, Planning Commission accepted the staff report findings and recommendation that the board adopt an ordinance amending the official zoning map to designate the C2 portion of the subject property R4, medium high density residential district, because the application demonstrates compatibility with surrounding zoning and uses and with adopted city plans if the future land use plan map is amended to residential medium high, consistent with the rest of the land that we are dealing with here, and thereby meeting the requirements of Hot Springs Code, Section 16-11E.
Any questions, Ms. Selman? Director Garcia.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Selman, this is only the change of zoning. Any building permits or anything is future action that will go through the planning process and permitting process. This is only for the zone change.
This
that
is
correct?
only the zone change.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any further questions, Ms. Selman? Do we have anybody sign up to speak?
No, sir.
No. Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. We'll move on to consider ordinance O-22-19, and I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules and read by title only.
So move.
Second.
Director Dobbs Smith and Director Garcia. Oh, wait,
It's all right.
I'm sorry, over here.
It's all right.
Who made the motion? Director Garcia, second by Director Trustee. And we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Same, opposed, same sign. Motion is adopted. Please read by title.
Ordinance O-22-19, an ordinance amending the zoning map from R4 to C2 for split zoned property generally located at 1207 Albert Pike Road, amending the future land use plan map and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Director Holliday was this motion. Dobbs Smith was the second. And again, Director Selman will provide the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. It's unusual to see split zone property in Hot Springs. It's even more unusual when we see an item like 02218, which we just saw, where we were looking at changing from one zone to another. This is the exact opposite of that request. The applicant is Mr. Marvin Rodriguez, who we've already met, and he is looking for C2 zoning on 2 acres of land at approximately 1207 Albert Pike Road. And this subject property is currently zoned both R4, medium high-density residential, and C2 general business district. Has a future land use classification of linear commercial corridor and residential medium high. It's in Board of Directors District Number 3. The surrounding land use to this, on the north, we have Arkansas Highway 70B, also known as Albert Pike Road. On the east, Starbucks and single-family residential. To the south, St. Louis Place Apartments, and to the west, Tobacco City. Planning Commission advertised their agenda and called for testimony at their regularly scheduled May 12th meeting. By their 8-0 vote, Planning Commission accepted staff report findings and recommendation that the board adopt an ordinance amending the official zoning map to designate the R4 portion of the subject property to C2, General Business District, because the proposed change demonstrates compatibility with surrounding zoning and uses and with adopted city plans if the future land use plan map is amended to linear commercial corridor, thereby meeting the requirements of Hot Springs Code Section 16-11. And that concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Selman? Director Weatherford.
Is that the, can you put that back up? Is that the property that's wooded on Albert Pike there where there's a creek or something?
It is wooded. There is a creek, yes. Mhm.
So he owns the front part already? Is that what he's?
I believe so.
It's about 2 acres, basically, from the entrance.
Well, yeah, I'm just, this portion right here,
Correct.
part that actually is on Albert Pike. You
Yes.
already own?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Any additional questions, Mr. Weatherford?
Does it, I just want to know if that
Yeah.
was the.
Anyone else have a question?
No, it's next to it. That's just that's next to Starbucks. That's a wooded area that's got a creek on it.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate it.
We'll call Mr. Marvin Rodriguez up. Please come forward and restate your name and tell us a little bit about your plans.
Marvin Rodriguez, and I'm representing 1207 Albert Pike.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I think it should be approved is because the main entrance for this property is on Albert Pike. And as I said, I own that part, which is about 200 feet from the street back to the property. And the property, the residential property, meets, or it's the same property actually. And I think it's gonna be beneficial not only for me, but for the city too, because it's gonna bring what we're planning to do is bring a little more work for the people, especially for a small business owner. For now, I want to start with a food trailer, but eventually, if it's all approved, I think it has the potential to have more like a food park, basically, which is going to bring more opportunity for people from Hot Springs.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Rodriguez? No questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you.
That's the only individual that's signed up to speak on this issue. Any discussion amongst directors? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Director Jones.
Aye.
Dobbs Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holiday.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. At this time, we'll consider ordinance O-22-20. And I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules to read by title only.
So moved, Mayor.
Director Jones, seconded by
Second.
Director Holliday. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules to read by title only. All those signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Please read by title.
Ordinance O-22-20, an ordinance prescribing a general penalty where no specific penalty is provided or were adopted by reference. And for other purposes, that concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion second to adopt.
Motion to adopt. Director Jones, seconded by Director Trustee. And the staff report will be provided by City Attorney Mr. Brian Albright.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Authority for the city to impose penalties as a result of violations of our ordinance is granted through state law. Arkansas Code annotated section 14-55-504 establishes the maximums which can be applied. This statute, which the city has been following since its inception, has been recently amended, and so the maximum penalties allowed have gone up. If adopted, this ordinance would apply that general penalties provision as maximums for all violations of city ordinances that are not inconsistent with state law. So if adopted, henceforth, first offense would be up to $1,000, second offense up to $2,000, and then $4,000 for each subsequent offense. If it's a thing that by its nature is a continuing violation, then it's $500 per day. Happy to entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions for the city attorney? Anyone from the audience that want to speak on this issue? Any discussion amongst directors? Please call the roll.
Director Dobbs-Smith.
Aye.
Weatherford.
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Trustee.
Aye.
Holliday.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted. Our final action item of the evening is to consider ordinance O-22-21. And I'll entertain a motion to suspend the rules, read by title.
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by Director Garcia. We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Please read by title.
Ordinance O-22-21, an ordinance authorizing a contract for services with Hot Springs Advertising and Promotion Commission for youth recreational programs at Majestic Park, waiving the requirements of competitive bidding and for other purposes. That concludes your reading, Mayor. If you would, entertain a motion and a second to adopt, and have discussion, if any.
So moved.
Director Weatherford, seconded by
Jones.
Director Jones. The staff report will be provided by City Manager, Mr. Bill Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As you recall, as part of our budget process, or during the budget process, I received a letter from Mr. Derek Phillips, the manager for the Majestic Park, requesting that the city enter into a contract for services in the amount of $75,000 to provide a baseball program for the city of Hot Springs. We had several conversations about that, and as we went through the budget process, there was a consensus to include that in the budget, and I so did that. The Board of Directors have previously appropriated funds for recreational activities within the city, including supporting the Hot Springs Boys and Girls Club Little League Baseball program. Up until I think it was maybe 2002 or I can't remember the exact date, but at one time we were funding that at $50,000 a year. Then I think it dropped down to $30,000 in 2018, which I believe was the last year of the program. Hot Springs Advertising and Promotion Commission is the owner and operator of the recreational facilities known as Majestic Park, which is located on the same property as the former Boys and Girls Club. Majestic Park is unique in a position to provide recreational youth activities on behalf of the city of Hot Springs. We do have the ability by ordinance to waive the requirements of competitive bidding in exceptional situations, which such procedure is found to be not feasible or practical. And of course, this is the only true baseball program that we have inside the city limits. There is a contract for services that was in your packet between the City of Hot Springs and Hot Springs Advertising and Promotion Commission, which states that the commission will provide summer youth baseball programs for the city at Majestic Park in the sum of $75,000. If ratified, the agreement will be in effect through December 31st of 2022. And again, as part of the request and the budget process, we did include that in the budget, so it was incumbent upon me to bring that to the board for a decision. I know that Mr. Steve Harrison and Mr. Derek Phillips are in the audience if you have any questions for those with Majestic Park.
Director Garcia?
I first had a question for the city attorney. The request was for, in the letter, was for spring and fall season, but the contract says summer. And would it be more appropriate just to have baseball, youth baseball program, and not limit it to specific saying summer?
Sure. Director Garcia, your proposed ordinance states that it's to conduct certain recreational activities. And so the contract could be as broad as certain recreational activities, if you so desire.
But it is for baseball, but the contract, before it's initiated, probably should be more broad.
It wouldn't need to be limited to a summer league if that's the board's desire.
Yeah, well, their request letter didn't say
The
summer.
term of the contract goes until the end of the year, so whatever.
Are you suggesting that we remove summer and just have a youth baseball program?
Well, I think that would be more appropriate.
You can do that. Doesn't necessarily require an amendment.
Right.
I may point out that the ordinance doesn't say to execute the attached contract. It says to execute a certain, a contract for certain activities. So I can make that change if that's the board's desire.
Go for it.
How do you get a consensus if we don't vote on it? Or, I think that's more appropriate, then it's broader.
Yep. There's,
We don't want to limit it to summer.
why don't we hear from Derek or Steven and tell us a little bit about your the baseball programming and what you contemplate these funds are
Thank you.
going to be this
Right.
spring, summer, fall. What?
Right. Well, thank you so much just for considering this. We've had baseball missing in our community for about 5 years now, and it's just awesome to bring it back. We're concluding our season tonight for our local league, and it may say summer baseball, and a lot of people think baseball is a summer sport. We started back in the winter, with our first bit of programming back in January. And I appreciate what you're saying, and I think it would be ideal to just say baseball for the year, because we'll do a fall program as well. We've had a lot of interest in that, expanding our season, and we had planned to do it anyway, so putting a season on it probably doesn't make sense, and I think having just baseball for the year it makes a lot of sense.
Questions of Derek? Director Garcia?
There was some financial information provided on the Majestic, but I didn't see expenses for, I believe it listed any expense for depreciation or on the cash, what your, you've got interest on any payments that portion for this. I was just concerned this didn't list all your real expenses.
So are you talking about like operating expenses?
Well, that may be operating, but you have to
Equipment and-
expense out your, the cost of the fields. I know we had, actually, the A&P contributed $100,000 so that we could get the original turf in at Kimmery Park.
Mm-hmm.
And that is less than a 10-year, because we've had to replace it in about 8 years. So I know you have depreciation. You have to have a reserve to make that replacement when it comes due.
Yes, ma'am.
And any other maintenance and reserve funds you need for the any big major costs that you'll have to make, just like you do on the A&P and has to do for the convention center. And I didn't know if all of that was fully represented. This may be what you've had to date on operations, and in the budget, but you actually have additional cost associated with the ball fields, don't you?
Are you talking about just like equipment and expenses for running the league, or what specifically? Because some of the things are just, narrowed down into certain lines, whether it be like equipment or, officials or staffing, things like that. I mean, they're all
Yeah.
in here. They're just in certain lines, maybe not broken down specifically to have quite so many line
But
items for
you've
the.
got assets there that have to be depreciated.
Oh, yes,
So
ma'am.
There'll be depreciation expense that should be going to, so you have monies to do the repairs and, I mean,
And the
there's
maintenance and
additional,
upkeep,
yeah,
yes, ma'am.
you've got to, because I know they have reserves for the other assets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
At
think
the-
there's $300,000 in that budget for depreciation, so that is for the assets itself.
Yeah,
And we do have a fund that we're trying to put money in for the turf in 10 or 12 years when it has to be replaced.
yeah, I would probably say it's 10 or at least 10 or less. Ours didn't last quite 10 years, but maybe the new has,
Yeah,
but by 10 years, that field would have to be replaced, so you'd have to have, I just didn't want to underestimate, and for cash flow, you've got the bond payments, that's principal and interest, so I didn't want it to look more profitable than it really is.
It's not.
That's what I'm saying. Currently, it's not.
It's not.
But Hot Springs did, like the city manager said, we were giving 50,000 to a ball program. We didn't have one till we got the Majestic. Y'all got the Majestic Park back. And in the summer, there's a summer program for high impact. And don't y'all allow those kids involved in that to play ball at the park?
Well, a huge part of that program was in our league program, and then they also get to use some of the facilities there during the year. It's very low usage, but we do work with that program pretty close.
And they're allowed to use it through the summer.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I was getting to, even though you might not have a summer league, the kids in that program we are using it for local residents
Oh,
during
yes,
the
ma'am.
summer. Because some of those kids involved in that summer program don't go out of town or don't go out of their neighborhood during the summer, and that's important for them to use.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
And then back to your question about the turf, and there's a couple other assets like you mentioned that would need, to be replaced in the next anywhere from 6 to 12 years. The turf, we're on a very good maintenance program to take really good care of it. And I think what you'll see is there's certain areas where there's a lot of activity, where they're batting or running around the bases that may need replaced sooner rather than later. But that whole field investment won't have to be replaced all at once.
Right,
With
yeah,
really
you'll
good-
do
a
it
really
in
good maintenance plan.
phases, but you'll need
Yes,
the
ma'am.
cash to generated to do that.
Yes, ma'am.
And so our contribution to the baseball program this way is used for wherever it's needed. Whether
Right,
it's for
and one-
scholarships or for
Not scholarships.
equipment or for whatever is needed.
Not
So-
scholarships, but you brought up something that's very interesting in equipment. We're a first-year program. I've been in recreation since about 1996, and I've never started a program quite like this to where we had nothing. And I'm very thankful to the entire community. People brought us baseballs and gloves and bats, and a lot of those things weren't usable, but it was still a great thought. But we had just over 500 kids sign up for this league. We had to have equipment for the entire program. That was a huge cost first year to be able to provide all that equipment.
Right.
In year one, you could just imagine what we bought in baseballs, batting helmets, catcher's equipment
Gloves.
alone. And
'Cause
so,
I know a lot of these kids can't afford anything.
right. And you mentioned the scholarships. The scholarship fund helps with those children that can't do that. But the other stuff that you just have to play, like I said, batting helmets, catching equipment, and baseballs. And
Yeah.
we had none, on a shelf in our equipment room to start the season with. That was a huge cost year one.
Yeah, and so everything that we put in is for the baseball program.
Yes, ma'am. The contract for services for the amount requesting for the city would provide for the baseball program, which would be said summer at some point, but it's really a spring and a fall season.
So
We're
that's-
still playing. Our last
Right.
tournament's the end of July,
Right.
but the league itself runs through the first week of June. Then there's some all-star postseason stuff, which still is a large part of our local community. And then right around Labor Day, we kick back up a fall league through basically around Halloween.
So we had supported the baseball program through the Boys and Girls Club at a $50,000 level. Then we didn't have a baseball program. So looking at the cost of current things, and that was without a turf fields. So this is, if you look at the inflation, this is not, inflation would make it a higher number. So for the city to have a contract appears to be good for our youth, that the city is part of the baseball program.
Yes, ma'am, and I appreciate you saying that and recognizing that, and we're, honored and thankful that you guys are considering supporting the program. It is for the local kids, and it's not going to fund the whole program.
Right.
But we
Oh,
do
no
actively,
way.
we do actively seek sponsorships and grants and everything we can to, help with costs, but this would be a huge part in help supporting that program.
Thank you.
Very good. Any further questions?
No, I wouldn't know what to ask now.
I've got,
Okay.
Pat, I've got one.
Oh, Director Trustee?
Eric, thank you. What kind of, let me see, back up to this page. How many employees do you have there?
Well, full-time, there are 6 of us.
Okay.
Part-time, we just have a large group of people because I've seen you at the park, you know how long the operations go on, right?
Sure.
So we have part-timers that run cleaning and concessions, and so we have a pool of 20 people
Okay.
that are part-timers that help with the long hours. We've been basically 7 days a week since March with tournaments and league play and, events like that. So that's our staffing, is our 6 full-timers and probably a pool of about 20 that split up those hours to run concessions and trash and bathrooms throughout the, weekend and weekdays on an event and keeping the park clean. I think we do a pretty good job of keeping it clean over there, so
You do.
requires a lot of help.
I was there this weekend.
I saw it. It was a
Team
really good
from-
weekend. It was nice to be out there. It was perfect weather.
It was. And then I have another question for, probably for Mr. Harrison, if that's.
Oh, Mr. Harrison, will you step forward, please?
Hi, Steve. Just a question about the need for this $75,000. I mean, based on the revenues for Visit Hot Springs, revenues are up this year, about 27% over what they were last
Right.
year, up over budget. The report, I think that Mr. Troutman mentioned that you gave the Rotary Club that I read about in the paper. I wasn't in the audience that day, anticipating a great summer. So I would kind of extrapolate that the revenues for the Visit Hot Springs will be probably in excess of $1 million over what was budgeted. So I guess I'm trying to understand the need for this $75,000 if Visit Hot Springs is going to have an excess like that.
Yeah, the A&P tax is for advertising and promotion. We took our funds, it's like $300,000 for the debt service.
Right.
We're doing all that. We'd like to use our money to advertise and promote.
Right.
We're providing a service that the city used to provide. So hopefully, we're providing that service for you. We're staffing it. We've got people there. We have expense. We'd rather spend that on advertising, to be real honest about it, to bring more people in. So our revenues and your revenues, our revenues, we get 3 cents on every dollar. I think you get a lot more than that than we do. So we'd like to raise that bar and keep getting more and more. But we're using our staff time to do a recreational league, which is really not our mission if you really look at it. On the weekends, we bring in a lot of tournaments that bring in a lot of people. We're trying to help the citizens as well. So it's sort of we have $300,000 depreciation a year. We have another almost $300,000 in bond payments. So we're out almost $600,000 of our money that we use for advertising and promotion. So it's sort of, I think it's great. Revenues are up. Everybody's revenues are up right now. But we still have to take care of the facility with the heavy use and replace turf, lights, all that as it gets older.
But if I'm reading this report right, your revenues for advertising and promotion are budgeted at just over $8 million.
Correct.
Is that right for
Yeah.
this current year? So do you anticipate additional advertising, additional promotion if your revenues are $9 million?
Well, we'd
or
like
more?
to. We also have a convention center that's 24 years old.
Yeah.
We've got to do $1 million roof next year. You know, we have other places to put our money as well, other than running a youth baseball league.
Right. But we knew that going in, when we did this park, that it was going to have to be subsidized.
Correct, we did.
Right. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Any additional questions?
I'd
Director
like
Holliday?
to dovetail a little bit on Director Trustees. I'm actually looking at the Majestic Ballpark financials, and, you know, we had the conversation in one of our recent commission meetings that everything is cost more, but revenues are up. And it looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, that right now we're about $96,000 ahead of budget as far as in net revenue.
And we have really been heavy. It's baseball season, especially for us. You know, the College World Series is going on. Major Leagues is in the middle of their season. But for us, we started in early February, and it's really going to slow down now that we've hit Memorial Day. So a ton of our business for the year has been done in February through Memorial Day. So, you know, the reason you're going to see that, you probably have that in other businesses in the city, right, where a lot of business is done at a certain period. And that's really what we are. It's a baseball park. And we'll have fall baseball, but you won't have near the tournaments with near the people or near the amount of kids play fall ball that will play spring ball. And that's because of football.
Right, but we're starting tournament season? Am I misunderstanding?
We started tournaments February 3rd, 4th,
Okay.
5th, and 6th.
Right, but you, I guess I'm misunderstanding the two different, because you're saying that our youth league is winding down and we've got All-Star, but then we've still got the travel ball and all of that going on this summer, correct?
We still have about 7 weeks left of travel tournaments.
Okay, so obviously that's not gonna be represented on here, and I'm assuming that would also be incredibly busy business. and
Right, but
popular
we've
business.
been, well, let me just say it like this. Since probably the last weekend in February until this past weekend, we've been 6 and 7 days a week of operations. Now that the league ends, we're going to be more like 2 and 3 days a week of operations. So you can imagine how that would change the percentage of revenue from being there 6, 7 days a week, bringing in concessions and gate and rentals and things like that, 6 and 7 days a week versus 2 or 3 days a week. That's why I was saying the numbers you're seeing are so heavy for this period.
Right, okay. And then my other question has to do with, in the 2022 budget, you have $75,000 in grant funds. Year-to-date would have been a third of that, but it says that we've already received $75,000. So if you're already clear on grants, was that $75,000 anticipated, like a city grant,
Yes.
this money?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but the $75,000 that is year-to-date received, I'm assuming that's from another funding source?
No.
It's on here as having been received, so that's what
We thought when you passed the budget that it was in there, so I think we sent an invoice to the city, and then we were made aware, so we probably took that as revenue.
Right, that 75 is the request that we made for the city
We
grant.
took it as revenue when we billed it, and if we don't get it, we'll back it out.
I did receive that invoice, just have
That-
not
That's
processed
what I'm
it. So
assuming it would be.
Yeah, that we don't have the balance sheet with this, but it's in their
Right,
receivables.
it's in our receivables, because I saw it today.
Okay, yeah, because I was curious because, well, one, I thought if we had gotten a $75,000 grant from someone else, I probably would have heard about it. But, yeah, curious as to where that lands. But I kind of echo Director Trustee's sentiment that based on the Visit Hot Springs revenues and the revenues at the moment in this, it is difficult to justify the need. Also, I have in my notes, and I'm assuming this is still the case, when we were first presented with this, I believe it was in January, we were talking about the year budget. I have a note that said that we're looking at Majestic Ballpark to be profitable with, after the second year. Is that still?
From an operating standpoint, I mean, we're not going to be profitable with debt service on a almost $8 million facility.
Right.
I mean, there's no way we're going to make that kind of revenue. I mean, that's just coming out of our bottom line right there. And then the depreciation, we have to start replacing and fixing and keeping it up. I mean, it's just like any other business.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate you. Do we have anybody sign up from the audience?
No, sir.
No? Any additional questions or discussion amongst board members?
Mayor, I would make a comment in light of Director Garcia's point that she made, and maybe this would be a recommendation as a motion to amend, but Madam Clerk, could you put up page 77 of the packet on their screen so they can follow along? All right, so section 1 currently reads, the mayor is hereby authorized and directed to enter into, I would strike A and then insert the attached, and then continuing contract for services with Hot Springs Advertising and Promotion Commission to conduct. I would strike certain recreational activities, insert youth baseball programs on behalf of the city of Hot Springs, Arkansas at Majestic Park during 2022 in an amount of $75,000 instead of in an amount not to exceed, because the contract clearly says it's a flat fee. And then with respect to the contract, paragraph 1, strike summer. Next page, 78 in your packet.
Do we need that in the form of an amendment?
Yes, ma'am.
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to, for these changes in the ordinance and in the contract. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Adopted. So that took care of the ordinance and the associated contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'll get the amendments to you tomorrow.
Okay. I know there's a lot of discussion regarding the fund sources of, Art?
Okay, I just need clarification. That was the motion to amend, but we still,
Oh, I'm sorry, it's only been amended. Now you need to vote as amended.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay, we'll vote as amended. Please call the roll.
Weatherford,
Aye.
Garcia,
Aye.
Trustee,
No.
Holliday,
No.
Jones,
Aye.
Dobbs Smith,
Aye.
Mayor McCabe.
Aye. Ordinance is adopted.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Brings us to the Board of Directors items for discussion. We have any items for discussion?
Can I voice an opinion?
Yeah.
I can't believe we have 2 directors that votes against a baseball program for our kids. We have done this for years with the boys club. We have a nice new facility. I can't believe you vote against something like this.
May I speak, Mayor? I didn't vote against the baseball program. I
This-
voted against what I see
This
as
is
a
out,
need.
point of order.
Well, he asked for he raised his hand.
Both are out of order because we've concluded that business.
Yeah.
Is that correct, city
That
manager?
is a
Attorney?
25 years ago, they made that once the items voted, but we're under items for discussion. So we're actually in a whole nother agenda item. So,
I guess the rules changed. It wasn't allowed before in
it's not,
discussion.
it's a whole nother section.
I know.
So, anything else to come before the board?
I just wanted, I do, Mayor, I wanted to give kudos out to the stormwater department and specifically our stormwater manager. I've received several very nice comments and letters on the assistance they've provided. And as you know, we have geography that is always not conducive to smooth runoff of our stormwater, and they've helped solve some problems that they're very appreciative, and they're doing a great job, and wanted to do a public shout out and thank them for the public comments received.
Any other? Director Holliday?
Yeah, I'll end on another positive as well. the city manager mentioned the master gardeners earlier, and I don't think anyone else here was there, but I attended the Monarch release this last weekend. That was a partnership between City Parks and Master Gardeners, and we had park staff there, and they had mentioned, it's the first time I had been, but they had mentioned that the attendance was several times larger than it had been in the past. And it was great to see the kids, and they had butterflies put in their hands that then flew away into the trees and landed on people, and it was a lot of fun, and it is a great relationship that we have with the Master Gardeners, so it was really good to see that this weekend. And that actually happened at the same time as the tubs, so I had to run the gauntlet of the tubs first and get hit with super soakers and then walk down to the butterfly garden. So definitely got a lot of hot springs on that morning, so.
Very good. So there's no further action. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Bear, you moving too fast for me tonight. I'd like to make the motion that we adjourn at 7:35.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. We do have a public comment section coming